hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on CASB and what we'd call the next level web filtering, web protection. So first of all, I'm Simon G, the BDM at EBS, and I'm joined by one of our key partners, Charles Milton at Censornet. So we work very closely together as part of the Censornet security suite. Some of you may have been on the webinar recently on security awareness training, and if not, it is on our YouTube channel. I'll refer back to that later. But today it's next level web filtering. So before I hand over to Charles, for those that have joined today, if I can ask you to turn your videos and turn you on mute, we are recording this and putting on our YouTube channel. During the webinar, if you've got any questions, if you want to pop them in the chat, and we'll either tackle them during the course of the session, or we'll have a session at the end of it to tackle those as we go. So without further ado, I guess before also I hand over to you, Charles, I will also just talk about EBS. For those that don't know us, I've kind of put some points. I'm not going to put this as a sales pitch. These are the services that we offer, trusted IT solution provider. We're real focused on security today and IT security. Those are the elements, you can talk to us about those at the relevant point. So Charles, over to you.
Good, thank you, Simon. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this webinar. I'm going to talk probably for about 20 minutes. And hopefully it'll be an engaging conversation. What we find when we're talking to a lot of businesses, business owners, IT directors of larger businesses, certainly, is that there's a dawning realization that they need to do something to get some visibility and control of the SaaS applications that their employees are using. So I'll talk a little bit about that environment as we go through, and then really the strategies for securing cloud applications. What you as organizations in conjunction with EBS can do. I'll talk a little bit about the flaws in the current solutions and way of thinking. Just by way of contrast, I'm sure a lot of you are Microsoft customers, so we'll talk a little bit about how Microsoft does it, and then really what we see as our strategies for building successful cloud application security, looking a little bit towards the future, and then just a little reminder of Censornet's broader solution as we go through. So with that, cloud application security has really evolved over the last 10 years significantly, actually, although when I think about my sort of 20-year career, the way you used to access a website and it was static and it was designed to provide information and do a bit of marketing. Now almost any website that you go to is actually a SaaS app, even shopping apps. I was on a favorite of mine, Sport Pursuit. I was looking at it this morning because they sent me some marketing. That is a shopping application in reality, but we're focusing on the business side of things today. And I think, depending on the way you look at it, we have all been hit by what you might call SaaS sprawl, what some people might call shadow IT. The reality is it's the way of the world now. 10 years ago, every application in every business had either been paid for and or sanctioned by the IT department. That's no longer the case. The marketing team go off and subscribe to applications without any input from the IT team. So do the finance people. People are using public SaaS applications all over the business, and that's great. It lets them do their job really efficiently, but it introduces risks. And if you look at some of the data that we've seen, most apps are not managed by IT. If I try and get like a cursor for you to see, I don't know if you can see that cursor now. Most apps are not managed by IT. Those apps are being used to compromise organizations. Maybe not on this slide, but we're seeing a lot of flow down terms from larger companies into the SMB space that are asking how organizations are controlling the risk associated with data loss through personally identifiable information getting out through SaaS apps. That's increasing concern. Users use unapproved tools. They use them, and the reason they use them is not to be malicious. They use them because they want to be efficient and please their bosses. And so there's a lot of duplication in here that, with SaaS apps, different SaaS apps being used by different departments. The reality is most of us don't know what's in use, and therefore we don't have a sensible grasp on what's being used and where our personal identifiable information is going. And the likes of Gartner talk about security awareness training, training employees. That's something Simon mentioned just now. It's another module in our platform. Absolutely necessary. Training the individual is critically important, but training on its own is not sufficient in reality to control any of the threats that we cover across email, web, and CASB, data loss, etc. So it's a combination of training and technology. This is about technology. And so, really, I don't know if anyone from JCB is on the call, but any other diggers are available. A solution, which you might think of as being using a hammer to crack a nut, would be for you to do a large professional services activity around SaaS applications. You could define the SaaS categories that you want to put things into. You can evaluate all the applications that are available within those categories and sanction the vendors or apps that you think are appropriate to your business. You could then communicate an approved list and block anything that's not on that list. Now, that's a way of doing it. And in fact, that's the way this has been done for some time. However, it's not the way businesses want to operate today. That would be massively unpopular for anybody to try and implement. It's also inefficient. The SaaS marketplace is moving so quickly that you can't keep up with your lists if you try and do it this way. So we take, we look at this as really a flaw in the way that's being done. And part of the problem here is that staff don't appreciate what the risks are in what they're doing. Why are they doing it? Why do they try and get round those sanctioned applications, be those, the sort of more traditional sanctioned applications? For example, one of the nice ones is PDF converters. The majority of businesses, at least somewhere in the business, have Adobe subscriptions and can convert files from PDFs and back. But still, we see online PDF tools, converter tools, being used. Why are they doing that? Well, they know that their actions might introduce risk. Most of them realize that that's the case, but they intentionally, the majority of them, bypass the guidance that they've been given. And the reason that they do that is because they do it. They feel they are allowed to do it or feel justified in doing it if it helps them meet their company's goals. And so you've got this contradiction between employees trying to do the right thing and companies trying to put controls or at least get visibility around what's going on that just really doesn't work in the current environment.
I think Charles, just to come in on that, I think that's
Sure.
a really good point, because to a certain extent, we can sometimes see in businesses where so much control is put in, it's almost preventing people from being able to operate.
Yeah.
And then it goes full the other side where there's no control, and then potential chaos, because, as you're right, people are just doing it to try and get their job done, aren't they? And I think, generally speaking, that's what this and how we then control that as much as anything. So it's not necessarily about malicious, is it?
No, it's not. It's certainly not wantonly malicious activity by the employee. Human error is always a thing, clearly, and training can help with that. But I think also, things do tend towards chaos. don't they? And I think for a lot of organizations, they've accepted much more, they've become much more lax because they realize that the use of SaaS applications has some real business benefits. But I think the pendulum has swung much more towards the chaos side of the spectrum than a lot of organizations realize. And we'll come on to that in a second. As a, understanding the chaos is certainly the first step in getting a grip of it, really. Yes, it might be worth just sort of using Microsoft as an example for how they think about this. So Microsoft is a much more traditional, they have a CASB solution. It's called Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps. It's part of the most expensive Microsoft packages. Some of you may have this, and we've met a lot of customers who have it included in their bundles. But they basically try and categorize the risk of an application. If you think about this, this is a screenshot from the Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps user interface. Every application that they've got, and they've categorized lots of applications, they give that application a risk. So the risk for Power BI is 10, whatever that means. The risk for a PDF converter might be 1, and you can block or allow an application. Now, that's fine, but actually Power BI is not 10 or indeed 1. It depends. The context of who the user is important. In fact, also the context of who the user is and what they're doing, what the specific action is that user is doing, is really important too. We look at this in a completely different way. We don't want to give an application a risk. We want to give the actions within an application a risk score, and that risk score, it is adjustable by the end user, by the customer, or by EBS on your behalf, if that's if you're getting a managed service from them. But every action in every application that we've categorized has what we call a baseline risk score. You can see it in the column there with the red and the blue. And so, for example, if we look at this, publishing an article is a high-risk baseline action. Now, you can change the slider on this and set the custom risk to average if that's what you want to do. But the reason published an article as an action is high risk is because that article might contain personally identifiable information that is being published onto the internet. So it's a relatively high risk. Whereas actually, resetting a password is an average risk. Obviously there's proper password controls built into these tools. Resetting a password through a normal password reset flow is an average risk, as is sending an email. But sharing a file is high risk. And the reason that's high risk is because that file might contain personally identifiable information. So what we've done is we give a much more granular set of controls to you. The policy engine then lets you define policy by individual or group from within Active Directory or Google Directory, whatever it is you use. And so it gives you a much more risk-based approach and flexible approach that means you can put cloud application security in place for your business without stopping all the people using all the capability, which would be very unpopular. So it's a much more granular capability than the traditional app A good, app B bad kind of scenario. So we have a sort of framework that we look at for helping our customers, and EBS have been very successful at following this with us, implement cloud application security successfully. And it's a pretty straightforward and common sense set of actions. And it goes like this. First of all, it's about monitoring user activity. Looking at what users are using what applications. Many of you will be familiar with the fact that we also provide web security capability. Some of you will be using that already. For those of you that are using our web security capability, we can turn on this monitoring with the flip of a license, with no impact to your users on day one, but give you really rich reports around what those users are doing. Once you've got that information being fed into our reporting framework, we can then understand what the user intent is behind their action. Are we seeing Sally in the marketing department using PDF conversion tools a lot? What is the risk associated with those PDF conversion tools? Do they have horrible terms and conditions, like anything I upload to that PDF converter is now the property of that PDF converter, which we see quite a lot. We then can work with you, EBS can work with you to understand your risk appetite, to understand where you want to tighten up, where you're quite relaxed, whether that's on a group or location basis. And then we've built policy templates that can really help with this. So you can then implement granular policies that give you sufficient control without making your employees less productive, which is kind of the Shangri-La we're all after, and that minimizes the user friction. So we use that. Sorry, Simon.
Sorry, Charles. Again, just to come in, perhaps I think one key thing is there that sometimes people are slightly concerned about the big brother approach of this. And I think one thing that this talks about here is that, and generally what we'll do is we'll put it in, and the term might be wrong here, but almost in a silent mode, essentially. So all we're doing is gathering data. We may then look at that. So when we get involved in this, we'll put that on for an agreed period of time, which is typically sort of 30 to 60 days. In a blind mode, gathering data, what's actually happening. It might be reviewed and think, wow, everything is absolutely perfect. It's unlikely to be the case. Everything's perfect, but we'll have a look and think, right, where are those potential risks? Is that stage 3 really, that define the risk in terms of where are the concerns? And like I say, I know working with Charles and Censornet, it's then a lot of what's in terms of the template will be probably 80% covered. It'll then be tweaking it to your environment. We're all different, and what those risks are, and that last 20% is often where
that's where the
configuration
magic
changes. Yeah, exactly. That's where the magic comes.
Yeah. I mean, we are all every business is unique, but there is a good chunk of it that is pretty common across UK businesses of a certain size. So absolutely. And yes, implementing this for in a monitor only mode, as you might call it, actually, for customers that are already deployed with our web security and have users actually using it, it's a 2 weeks is sufficient to give you a really good view. But yeah, absolutely right, Simon. Thank you. So then we, so really what we're trying to do is then understand where you fall against our app catalog, and the app catalog is really the clever, the smart bit of the solution. So it's a dynamic application catalog. We focus on business applications. We break those into 45 odd classes. Every one of those then we break into the actions within that. So a nice example would be Dropbox. I don't know, uploads a file, downloads a file, changes permissions on a folder, creates a file. All of those actions have that baseline risk score associated with it. We're constantly analyzing new applications to define the risk associated with those actions, and it's really the action risk methodology that makes us different from everyone else. It means that you can very quickly implement a policy that is relatively broad brushstroke. So you can say, yes, these are my sanctioned applications, but for any other application, I'm going to allow low and average risk actions, but not high and very high risk actions as well. So
Charles, I've got a question popping about applications actually. I think I'm understanding. So what happens if we we come up with an application you haven't seen before? Which I think is a really good question, because as you said earlier, you know, it's an evolving world of new applications coming, SaaS applications coming out all the time.
Yeah, it's a fact of life, I suppose, that new applications will appear, or new actions will be added to existing applications, and so we're constantly analyzing those. If we come up with a new application, we had it the other day actually with a partner in India. They used a webmail application that they wanted categorized, that we'd never seen before, because we'd never worked in their market, in their particular market, with that webmail application. So we then analyze those and add them into the catalog. We're constantly reviewing, adding, amending the catalog. It normally takes 24 to 48 hours to add, to fingerprint and analyze and add a new application to the catalog. Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah. So then just a couple of little bits before we wrap up here. I think deployment is obviously important. For those of you that aren't already using our web security capability, the direct protect architecture that we have is critically important. It's all very well putting these controls in place, but we've developed a capability, an architecture called direct protect, which allows us to apply all of this policy without changing the network path, without introducing latency, without changing the source IP address so you get the wrong content when you go to Google or whatever it is. We've really built an architecture that is really quick to deploy and has minimal impact on the end user experience. Traditionally, CASB has been deployed using a proxy-based architecture. For those of you that are more technical, that proxy has to be somewhere. If that's in the wrong place, or if it's overloaded, or indeed it's the network to it is in any way affected, it causes real user issues. So not only have we thought about simplifying the catalog and how that's used by EBS to support you, but we've also made the implementation really straightforward. It's agent based. There is a gateway, a sort of Uber agent gateway that can be deployed, but in 99% of circumstances now, it's a small agent that's deployed and then gives you full web security and CASB capability at the same time. This is just talking more about that. Agents on Windows and Mac devices, for example, the gateway is used where you've got desktops or guest Wi-Fi mobile devices connecting to your guest Wi-Fi, etc. So just thinking about the future here, really, what we've got is an evolving market, really. We are really, Gartner's Tech Radar from last autumn, which sort of talks about what we're doing today, talked about CASB and proxyless web security. Well, that is exactly what we do. Having inline and API mode modules, absolutely, that's what we do. In addition to that, one of the things that we've also just released, some of you who follow me on LinkedIn will have seen, we've just released another module in our platform called SSPM, which is SaaS Security Posture Management. This sits alongside Cloud Application Security, or CASB, and monitors how well you've configured your cloud applications from a security perspective. So where CASB, or Cloud Application Security, looks at public SaaS, your use of Salesforce, your use of Dropbox, etc. SSPM says, have you configured your Microsoft correctly? Have you enabled multi-factor authentication, for example? So we're really looking at how we support organizations like yours in the SaaS world, using both public SaaS and also corporate applications like Microsoft, like OneDrive, for example. So then finally, I think really, one of the reasons that Censornet has been really successful is actually the breadth of capability that's in the platform. We've built a platform that's got multiple modules in it. Today we've talked about CASB predominantly. We did a session the other day that's on the YouTube channel around security awareness training on the right-hand side here. We cover really the major attack surface for organizations, and there are real benefits to having multiple modules in the same platform, all communicating with each other, all sharing threat intelligence. The best example of that is actually DLP. So CASB is about the action, is the user uploading, downloading files, etc. DLP is actually then looking at what's in those files. So Charlie is allowed to upload a file to Dropbox in the CASB catalog, but DLP says Charlie's allowed to upload a file so long as it doesn't include passport information, email addresses, whatever your DLP policy is. And that's a common policy across email and the web and CASB channels. So you set the policy once and it's applied across the major channels to make sure that Charlie doesn't try and email it out, get stopped, and then try and upload it to Gmail, in which case it would be caught in the web channel, or Dropbox, in which case it would be caught in the CASB channel. So multiple services in a single platform. Obviously, working with EBS provide these services to you and give you a really seamless but very powerful cybersecurity capability. So with that, the offer is there. If you're unsure of how many cloud applications or what cloud applications your staff are using, we can work with you, with EBS, to help you quantify the risk, and then put a remediation plan in place if if you feel it's necessary. We are here with EBS to support you. If anything that we've talked about today is something you'd like to take up further, then please do make contact with EBS and let us know how we can help. We're a very experienced, friendly, non-pushy team. I think the value of this stands on its own 2 feet when customers see it. That there is always a little bit of an aha moment when people understand what cloud applications are being used by their employees and the risk that they're in, and there's a gap between the perception and the reality that this shines a light on quite neatly. So with that, I suppose we'll jump to questions. Really, are there any questions that have come in? Simon, I'll turn my camera back on probably now so everybody can see me.
We've answered that. So here's one. In terms of discovery, how do we define policy? Go on, I'll let you answer that, Charles. You'll probably answer it. It's a bit of a combination, really, isn't it?
So the gap between discovery and policy is where EBS and we add value. The discovery will show you as a customer what's in play, what's being used, and the risk associated with what's being used. We would then review that, because policy isn't just a technical thing. It's a technical implementation of what your business risk appetite is, and the cloud doesn't understand that. That's the interpretation that EBS and Censornet would bring onto that data. So we would work with you to define policy. Now, we've got some templated policies, as Simon mentioned earlier, that probably get us to a sensible position, but it's working with you as a customer to make sure that the edge cases are not a problem. That's the consultative bit.
Excellent. And I've got 2 more. One of them I'm sure is for comedy value, and that's, are there any more acronyms you could think of? But I don't think we should answer that.
I can come up with one PDQ, but I don't know. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's an acronym.
Okay.
It's an acronym.
On a more serious note, what about data leakage prevention? I guess actual data loss.
Yeah, Yeah, so that acronym DLP, I always interchange loss and leakage, but really it's leakage. And so generally it's not intentional, but I mean, you know, so we talked about DLP running across email, web, and CASB. That is that acronym. Yeah, I mean, the thing that's changed all of this really, and the need for the one thing that's driven the need for cloud application security and data leakage prevention, if there were one thing, is GDPR and the fines associated with GDPR. You know, they're not limited to Meta or whoever. Any organization can get hit with quite a significant fine that can be a proportion of revenue. You know, a significant proportion of revenue. So significant fines. So, you know, but I think this is a journey for a lot of people. What we find is generally people start by saying, okay, let's get an understanding of the cloud applications and the risk associated with those. Once we've got that, we've got a policy in place and that's bedded down, we'll start to look at data leakage prevention. And it's a journey. And I think you need a partner that understands your business and the technology to help you on that journey. And that's really where EBS come in.
Yeah, and I think that's it. I think, yeah, I think a couple of points there. Yes, GDPR is a massive thing. You know, it's probably a discussion for a different day. And I think very much it isn't just enterprise businesses that get hit with this stuff.
No.
In fact, it's probably the contrary, if I'm being honest. In SMB, SME world, it's very much the case. So we need to be on top of that and give that guidance, really. And I think also that experience of being able to let's find out where those risks are and define it between us. There's not a hard and fast rule. No. You're not on your own out there. I think, you know, that's where we're there to guide you, and we need also the skills of Charles and his team at Censornet and the three parties really to support that really, of, yeah, this is the generic requirement, but actually let's make it also more specific to yourselves as well.
Yep, absolutely.
I have no other questions at this point.
No, good. Okay, so with that, then we'll wrap up, I think, Simon. But thank you, everybody, for attending.
Yeah, thank you, Charles.
That's been useful.
Yeah, a couple of things. I'll let you jump onto the next slide. Just as a reminder, smooth. There we go. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's, you know, this is one factor, and that whole security piece we talked about, SAT, where, you know, there's various discussions on our YouTube channel. We talk about the different things that EBS offer as well. So, you know, it might be more Sage related, etc. So have a look, subscribe to our YouTube channel. And in fact, our next webinar, let's say it's on something completely different, which is on Cycon Talk, sales and purchase order management. So yeah, sign up to that. It's on the 26th of this month. So yeah, please sign up for that. But if you've got any questions, reach out, touch base to us, hello@ebs.tech. You'll find our website as well, www.ebs.tech. Touch base. I want to hear from you.
Wonderful.
Sorry, Charles.
No, great. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
See you soon. Bye.
Thanks very much. Thanks. Bye.